My name is John Eckert. I'm at the Baylor Center for School Leadership at Baylor University, and I want to spend just a few minutes today talking to you about how to give students better feedback. To give good feedback, we have to start with good assessments. Assessment conjures a lot of words when we think about what assessment means, but if we actually go back to its root, which is a Latin root word, it means to sit beside. If we think of assessment this way, assessment becomes all about improvement. And so therefore, feedback is critical. So in 8 steps today, we are going to talk about how we're going to improve feedback for students. This builds on the work of Jim Nottingham, who's done great work on feedback and challenging learning. And today I want to add a step and frame these in a way that hopefully will be helpful to you as you think about better feedback for students in your classes. So when we think about feedback, we have to start at the beginning with a shared target that we're shooting for. So you've got to know what the target is. And it's not true that just the student needs to know this or the teacher needs to know it. It's that they have to agree and know that together. And so the student and the teacher need to know what that target is, and they need to be looking at their progress toward that target. So I'm going to use just a very simple metaphor to help us think about this, because this has been helpful for me as I think about what that kind of improvement that we hope for from feedback might look like. So if we think about this as climbing a mountain, the teacher and the student are trying to determine how to reach that summit. Now they both have to be looking at that same goal. They both want to make it to the top of that summit. And so we want our eyes focused on that. And then the student makes an attempt. I don't call this a rough draft. Again, this isn't just for writing papers, but I don't want to think about this as a rough draft. This could be deeper project-based learning. But you're going to have what I call a first final draft. I got this term from another professor a few years ago, and I just love the idea of this, that it's the student's best work that they can do on their own without any help. So if students are doing the best work that they can produce, then we know how to give them meaningful feedback. If they don't do great work on that initial draft, it's not the best that they can do. It's hard for us to give them feedback for how to improve. So we want their best effort on that first attempt. So as the student begins to climb this mountain, we want to see them start at the base of the mountain and start up. All right? So the first final draft comes. The teacher doesn't look at this yet. All right? This goes to a target check with a peer or the individual, him or herself. The key to this is that you have to have clear criteria for success. The peer or the individual or both need to be able to track progress to see where they're moving on this mountain, how far they've gotten, and then get advice for how to keep moving forward. So as this individual continues to climb, they're going to climb more effectively because of the feedback they've received from the peer. All right? So I've already started down that path. Students need to improve their work at this point. So they keep climbing up the summit. All right? That brings us to step 5, which is my favorite one because it is step 5. We're going to do another target check, and this is the point where the teacher steps in and gives feedback on the progress that they see the students making. So the great thing about this is you're not doing it at step 2. Step 2 is where when I started teaching, that's where I started giving feedback, and I would a lot of times have students all over the summit. They would not have made it to the summit clearly, but they were all on their way up the mountain. So now I'm able to look and say, oh, okay, this is where they're at. Now I can give the student more feedback to continue to climb. The great news is the work is so much better at step 5 than it is at step 2. I can give deeper, more meaningful, more interesting feedback for improvement rather than just the rudimentary feedback that they might be getting at step 3 that a peer can give with clear parameters if the criteria for success are clearly laid out. Then step 6 comes. And this is the part that's most important in the feedback process, because now the students have 2 rounds of meaningful feedback to continue to improve their work. They're not going to ignore feedback at this point. They're going to take the feedback that you've given and they're going to improve again. So they continue to climb up the peak, hopefully getting really close to the top, if not to the summit, and then is when we grade. Now, if you're grading at step 7 instead of step 2, you should have seen a huge amount of progress there. This is not about grade inflation. This is about determining how close to the summit the student got. We are now going to be honest, and they've had the support that they need to get as far as they can, and you're now assessing what they're capable of doing, which was different than what they were capable of doing at the beginning, which is the whole point of learning, which is growth and struggle. They've done the work, they've just gotten meaningful feedback along the way that will probably result in a higher grade, but that's not the point. The point is that they're doing better work. The final step that I think teachers and students need to do is to reflect. The student hopefully is standing atop the summit or near the top of the summit, reflecting on how much they've grown over the course of this process. The teacher is also standing next to that student because we have partnered with the students and we're thinking about how we need to change the way we give feedback on this summit, or if there needs to be another summit that needs to be climbed. And then both of us are looking for the next summit. Where does the next learning go? You may have to descend the mountain to get to the next one, but we've now peaked and we can have a view of where we go next. If you're interested in continuing this conversation, you can always reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at EckertJohn. Or at my Baylor email address, john_eckert@baylor.edu. We know at the Baylor Center for School Leadership that we get better when we do this work together, and it's all about improvement. Thanks for your time.